This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area. Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
Quiet on the set. Soon we will all be more informed.
We appreciate learning more of our region's news and public affairs. Cameras rolling.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Woltering. Marcia is off tonight. We learned this week in the aftermath of a French Quarter murder how many parts can go wrong in causing a crime. We also saw how posting the 10 Commandments can cause a courtrooms full of debate. In politics, although the presidential election has taken some unusual twists, we will look at what to expect from Louisiana. Elsewhere, the state is anticipating something unusual, a bug invasion from beetles. And we'll take a special look at the life of Tessie Prevost, who from childhood was part of the movement to integrate local public schools. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Dave Cohen, news director of WWL Radio, Kevin McGill, reporter for the Associated Press, and LeBron Joseph, news anchor and reporter at WGNO-TV Channel 26. Let's move first to Dave Cohen to talk about that French Quarter murder of a beloved tour guide and a murder that revealed some disturbing problems with criminal justice.
This is one where you look back and each layer of the onion you unpeel, you find another failure and another action that if somebody had done something, this woman would still be alive. 43-year-old Christy Thibodeau, this vivacious, charismatic woman who loved to bring tourists on tours of the French Quarter, tell them about our city, sitting in a car early the morning of June 30th, and three individuals, according to police, walk up to the car, open fire, shoot her and kill her. And as we've learned more about the suspects, it's really disturbing that, for example, 15-year-old Kevin Nunez had previously been convicted. Mm-hmm. He wasn't out on bail. He wasn't awaiting trial. He had been convicted in juvenile court. We don't have all the details because of the secrecy that surrounds juvenile records and the limited information. But we know that the DA says that were violent crimes that he was convicted of and sentenced to detention. He was supposed to be locked up. But a judge in juvenile court made the decision to let this juvenile convict out with an ankle monitor. The ankle monitoring system that the city contracts with for juveniles doesn't function in real time.
Wow.
It records the movements of the person that they're monitoring so that after the fact they can look and see, were they at home when they were supposed to be at home, or school when they were supposed to be at school, or work when they were supposed to be at work. But he was supposed to be at home. Here we are before 5 a.m. on the streets of the French Quarter, and he's out with a gun in the French Quarter, allegedly committing various crimes, ending with the murder of 43-year-old.
He allegedly pulled the trigger.
That's what police tell us, that the 15-year-old Nunez was the trigger man, or the trigger child, sentenced to detention, had a warrant out for his arrest on top of that, for another crime that he had not yet answered to, and he had deactivated the ankle monitor.
Wasn't working, right.
So whatever he had done to it, and previously he had cut one off, and they went and put another one on him. But none of this, anywhere along that series of events, triggered the juvenile court judge saying he can't be free anymore. He needs to be locked up in the Juvenile Justice Center.
And Jason Williams, the DA, says that he wants to get rid of this ankle monitor system. But there's a competing firm that says he could be using this other system that does work. But
the adult monitoring system does in real time tell the monitoring contractor where the individual who has the ankle monitor is. They can tell, and they get alerts on their system. If they're supposed to be at home and they go outside the perimeter that's allowed, during hours they're not supposed to be going to work or to school or to somewhere else, it alerts. That's the adult system. The juvenile system doesn't do that. So here we have a convicted violent juvenile offender with a warrant for an arrest who has been known to tamper with the ankle monitor, who's out, and now police say this time he shoots and kills this 43-year-old woman, and he wasn't alone.
But Attorney General Liz Murrow wants to investigate this system.
She not only wants to investigate the ankle monitors, but she has called on the state Supreme Court to launch an investigation of juvenile court to ask the Supreme Court justices to find out what is happening at New Orleans Juvenile Court, because it is, as some call it, a secret society, a star chamber, a black box. We've heard all these terms, because in order to try to protect the juvenile offenders, the information is so locked down that people don't know what the judges are doing. We don't know how many other Kevin Nunez's who are supposed to be locked up are out there on this faulty monitoring system committing more crimes, because it's very hard to get information out of juvenile court. On top of that, one of the 17-year-old Durbin Albarek, who was with Nunez, according to New Orleans police, was in the country illegally.
I thought it was a 19-year-old, actually.
Yeah. Pardon me. Yeah.
Was the immigrant in the country illegally?
Bonifacio,
I'm sorry, Bonifacio Avila. According to Customs Enforcement, he had been picked up previously by Border Patrol, and they knew that he was here illegally.
Wow.
Not only that, but he had been arrested twice in 2023 and earlier this year in Jefferson Parish for other crimes. So that raises other questions about, okay, if we have an illegal immigrant, a 19-year-old illegal immigrant, who has been arrested multiple times by federal and local authorities. We have a 15-year-old who's supposed to be detained in the Juvenile Justice Center, who's out on a less than perfect ankle monitoring system, and a third suspect. You just wonder if people had done their jobs along the way,
and
would this woman still be alive?
The older alleged assailant, this Joshua Bonifacio, said they were going around just robbing that night.
And that's, New Orleans police will tell you that's what they see all the time. They see teenagers and juveniles with guns just going and either pulling door handles or committing armed robberies or all these other crimes at all hours of the day and night. And at no point has there been a flag raised where the juvenile court has to answer to why, if they have evidence of the previous violent activity, they're giving these children chance after chance after chance to continue to terrorize the community. Yes, we're seeing less of this. It's not nearly as bad as it was, say, 2 years ago. Carjackings are down 50% in the city. Armed robberies are down 44% in the city. Almost every crime is actually lower now than it was in 2019, and we should be celebrating that. Murder and non-fatal shootings are still lagging behind, but
real quickly, the governor has chimed in on this.
Yes.
Yeah, the governor actually issued a tweet about the 19-year-old in the country illegally, saying this man should never have been in Louisiana. Enough is enough. We must close our borders and keep our communities safe.
Oh, all right, thanks. And Kevin McGill, you have a story about that, the 10 Commandments now in public schools in Louisiana.
It's an update. We were here last month. We're talking about Governor Landry signing a bill that requires the 10 Commandments to be posted in public school classrooms from the elementary level up through the university level. And we were back a little later talking about the lawsuit that was filed almost immediately in federal court. Weren't sure how that was going to play out, but this week, the parents who are opposed to the bill, parents of school children of various faiths, have asked the judge to put at least one element of this lawsuit on kind of a fast track. They want, the suits will play out over months and sometimes years, but they want a preliminary injunction blocking the state from implementing this bill while the lawsuit plays out. And they asked this week that the briefs be filed by both sides by basically mid-July to late July. They're asking for a hearing at the end of the month, and they're hoping for a ruling that will block the law's implementation by early August. I think some public schools are opening around August 8th, and they say that this the bill will the requirement subjects their children to unwanted religious coercion, and they want to make sure that there's nothing done, even implementation. The effort to get it started, they don't want that rolling. And the bill also requires that the postings be done by January 1st, which I guess is a little past the midpoint of the school year. So they just want to put that on hold.
They think some teachers or some individuals may go ahead and post it at the beginning of the school year, not wait till January 1st.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's certainly the way some districts will. And we're going to find all kinds of reaction to this in different districts and different schools. I think we noted last month that a former teacher of the year flatly said he wasn't going to do this because he felt it was unconstitutional. And that will lead to questions about what kind of law what kind of teeth does this law have? I don't think there are any criminal. It doesn't have any criminal implications, but could it be a firing offense not to put it? Could it result in the state sanctioning the schools?
And what will this look like?
They've got a certain size. It's poster size. I don't remember the exact dimensions, but there's a very specific version. This is playing into this, too. There's a very specific version of the Ten Commandments. And I couldn't quote you the source. I mean, obviously the Old Testament, but other than that, there are certain different versions of the Bible that they look to. It's not the version that you would find in the Torah, so even some people of different Christian faiths object to it on that basis.
Yeah, I found it interesting that some clergy who have children in schools have come out against it, saying, "Hey, we want to be the ones as religious leaders to teach what the Ten Commandments mean. We don't want public school teachers doing it." So it's not just parents, but many clergy who are opposed to this.
It needs to be said here because the state has not responded yet to the motions to get it on a fast track or for an injunction, but they've defended the law. Governor Landry and legislators have defended the law as more history than religion, saying that the Ten Commandments are a historic basis of American law.
And the governor talked about Moses creating the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, which kind of feeds into the argument that if you call a religious figure from the Old Testament as the great lawgiver, that would kind of feed into the opposition's effort to say that this is a religious exercise and it violates the First Amendment.
Probably going to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court?
At some point it will. The Supreme Court has issued what a lot of people look at as conflicting, I'm sure there are nuances, but conflicting rulings on this. They've upheld the posting of the Ten Commandments in public spaces in some instances and not in others. So I would think this is going to be shades of the old creationism law from 30 years ago. We're going back to Supreme Court.
And with the new Supreme Court, we don't really know what could happen.
There could be some variables. Although I don't know the last if the court was constituted exactly like it was the last time they ruled on this.
Liz Murrell, the Attorney General, has pointed out she's anxious to go before the Supreme Court because there are multiple art depictions of Moses in the chamber of the Supreme Court, and she has made the point, and I think that's why the governor is also pointing toward Moses because, well, he appears in the chamber at the U.S. Supreme Court.
There have been arguments about this going back to the time when Congress, soon after the Constitution, required prayers in Congress. So it's
Thanks, Kevin. LeBron, we want to talk about a civil rights trailblazer who died over the 4th of July weekend. She was one of the New Orleans Four.
Yeah, one of the New Orleans Four, Tessie Prevost, passed away. We have some footage of her at actually the opening of the TEP Center, which is a center that is actually named, it's the old McDonough 19, the school they helped to integrate. You know, what's interesting about the story of Tessie Prevost and Gail Etienne and also Dr. Leona Tate is that there is Tessie Prevost on the screen there at the opening just a couple of years ago. The lieutenant governor and everyone was there, Mark Morial to her right. And as I said, this is the old McDonough 19 school, integrated on the same day, November 14th of 1960, that Ruby Bridges integrated Friends School in the Upper Ninth Ward. The interesting thing about these three women is the Norman Rockwell painting largely blew Ruby Bridges up, and that a lot of folks see it as, oh, that's who integrated the New Orleans schools. But it was all four of these young girls, 6-year-olds, on the exact same day. And the same reactions. A lot of folks outside and screaming and slurs to these young ladies and all that.
Had to be terrifying.
Had to be terrifying. very interesting in interviews with Dr. Tate. She says they all thought they were going to a Mardi Gras parade because all of the people were outside and they're little girls and they're in the cars with these marshals and all that. Of course, when they got out of the cars, you know, and could hear these people and what they were screaming at them, things changed.
Yeah.
A lonely time for these young girls because all of their classmates, their parents took them all out of school. So for a time, they were the only 3 girls in the school, not only in their class,
for 2 years.
in the school. That's exactly right. The beauty of the story, these women went on to live their lives here in New Orleans, all of them. Ruby Bridges moved away for a period of time, and I don't know if she's back in New Orleans yet. But they've all lived their professional lives. Ms. Prevost worked over at LSU Medical Center for years. And Dr. Leona Tate started a foundation, her own foundation, in the Lower Ninth Ward, doing a number of things, feeding folks during the Thanksgiving holidays and all that. But her foundation, along with another neighborhood development corporation, came together to buy the school. And the issue was, is we're going to name it the TEP Center. You know, Tate, Etienne Prevost, that's what it is called. It is not only part museum, some of that footage you saw of the 3 desks and all that, it's part museum, part learning center, but also affordable housing in the Lower Ninth Ward. It really, I mean, a school is usually pretty nice square footage, you know.
But those girls, I mean, they went through a lot. First of all, they took a test. They went to Orleans Parish School Board to take some kind of a test. And I wasn't clear about that, what that was. I mean, do you have any sense of what that test was?
I guess today it would be called a placement test, if you will, but, you know, they just wanted to go to school in their neighborhoods.
And they went to another school after that. After 2 years, they went to another integrated school where there was not the protection they had initially, and there was a lot of bullying and violence. So they went through a lot.
They went through an awful lot. Errol, you were going to say?
Yeah, there was another person who was needs to be recognized in New Orleans history because he was the hero of the saga, was a federal judge.
Yeah.
A guy by the name of J. Skelly Wright. And he had all that docket on him. And so he was the guy who essentially integrated the schools. You know, he did all the orders, you know, you must do this. Needless to say, he wasn't a very popular guy.
No, he wasn't. Imagine not.
He lived a very difficult life, but during that period, he was really important to the social structure of the city.
And the Catholic schools, of course, integrated a couple of years after it. That didn't happen immediately. They were 2 years afterward. But, you know, these 4 women are heroes, and certainly a lot of tributes to not only Tessie Prevost this week, but all 4 of those women.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that a 6-year-old would go through that gauntlet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just imagine what's going through your head when something like that
There
happens.
is archival footage in the Historic New Orleans collection of this, of the 3 of them walking up the steps. There is also footage of Ruby Bridges going into Franz Elementary as well. And, you know, the folks are outside with the signs and all of that, and these little girls kept on walking and all. It's a very interesting take.
And that was only 64 years ago.
Yeah. The fact that these women are still alive.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And we just lose Tessie Prevost in our lifetime. This happened, you know.
But when the Catholic schools integrated, there was one woman, I'm sorry I couldn't remember her name, but she was so outspoken and so angry about all this that the Archbishop excommunicated her. It's the only example I can think of in New Orleans history when somebody was excommunicated, but she was kicked out of the church for her opposition to it.
Errol, you can tell us about the presidential race in Louisiana.
Well, we got the Republican convention coming up this week, and so it'll be made official that Donald Trump will be the nominee. We've still yet to find out who his vice presidential choice is, but it sounds like he's going to announce maybe Monday or Tuesday. But this makes me think about, make people aware of the whole presidential election system. Because the Electoral College is really not quite what people think. A presidential election is not one big nationwide election. It's 50 statewide elections. And that really determines a lot about the politics and the way that things go. It is possible for a candidate to receive a majority of the popular vote, but not have a majority of the electoral vote and not win. It doesn't happen very often. But it is possible.
It happened in 2016.
Yes,
it did.
There's all kinds of things that happen. There were years when you had like a third-party candidate that divided up the votes and all that. But most often it happens that way. But and so you really think of it in terms of how the electoral vote's going to go. By all indications, it's going to go for Trump. The last election 4 years ago, Trump got 60% of the vote in Louisiana. If you look at all the elections recently, really since World War II, Louisiana is going Republican. Just about every election. A couple of exceptions is when there was a Southern governor running. When Bill Clinton ran, he won both times. When Jimmy Carter ran, he was elected the first time, but not the second time. Louisiana went for Ronald Reagan. But other than that, the tendency is to go with the Republican, and I don't see anything changing because look at the state elections we just had where everybody, including the governor, who's a supporter of Trump, was elected. And so that's probably the way it's going to be. And so, you know, when you look at the politics, we're not going to see, Louisiana and a lot of states aren't going to see a lot of politicking here because we're not that important. I mean, in terms of the electoral votes. They go to the so-called swing states where the votes like Michigan and Pennsylvania and California and Florida. I mean, there'll be some kind of lip service with a different type of politics. But the one thing I want to mention, and this is just a rumor, but it's a rumor that's going all around, is that Jeff Landry, who's a supporter of Trump, that if Trump is elected, he wants to be the Attorney General. And that would be like him to want to be Attorney General, even though I don't think he's a new governor. And probably being governor is a lot more fun than being Attorney General, because when you're governor, you're boss, you're in charge.
But he's making a lot of moves that Trump would like.
Yeah. Well,
No doubt.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, if he was in his second term, in his second term, he might like being, but not in his first term. But who knows? But just think, if that happens, if Trump is elected and Jeff Landry is appointed Attorney General, then Landry's got to resign as governor. Billy Nungesser is going to be governor.
And that has been Billy Nungesser's dream for so long. The numbers have never worked out for him. He can get elected for as long as he wants to lieutenant governor, but he found out he just could not win the governor's mansion. He would love that.
And so a lot can happen politically, but I don't think there's going to be much suspense, though, about the election in Louisiana.
Errol, you said that we don't know who the vice president Republican candidate is. Apparently, we don't know who the Democratic presidential candidate is either.
Well, that's a whole nother
There's some uncertainty about that.
that's a whole nother
There are some questions there as well these days, you know?
I'm talking about the Republican convention is this week.
The convention's next week, that's right.
And local Republicans, though, are very happy that Donald Trump recently came down to raise money here, knowing that he's not going to hold a big rally here. He doesn't have to win votes here, not only because we have so few electoral votes, but also because it's a foregone conclusion he's going to win Louisiana. But they enjoyed the fact that they got to bend his ear, visit with him when he came to New Orleans and held a fundraiser, which, by the way, generated far more money than anyone expected. So.
And Trump has talked about the governor. I mean, he's like the 10 Commandments move. He's happy with that.
He has. He's talked about what his support for that move, and Landry would be. I know it's you said it's a little, but Landry would be someone right in the ideological profile for that.
But imagine if he would become Attorney General, then from Louisiana, you'd have the Speaker of the House and the House Majority Leader, and a seat on the Supreme Court. Okay, all from Louisiana. So.
Yeah, and I can't imagine if Trump did offer Landry the job. You got to imagine it'd be really hard for him, even though he's he's 6 months into being governor, for him to turn that down.
Oh, I don't think he'd turn it down.
I don't think he'd turn it down. Kevin, a small bug, a beetle, is causing a lot of mayhem in parts of Louisiana, even caused a woman's death, apparently.
Yeah, surprisingly.
We're talking about the bug and not
the beetle. not
the wrong group.
Not Paul and Ringo. This was a surprisingly big topic at the Capitol this past week. Apparently, it's not as big a problem around here, but it is. It could affect the state budget at some point, arguably. And it's another outgrowth of something we all experienced across the state, the extreme drought of last summer. It stressed a lot of the pine trees that are prevalent in central and north and southwestern Louisiana, and that stress combined with the bark beetle, which has been around for a long time and has caused problems from time to time, but it stressed the trees, causing massive tree deaths. I don't have numbers, but some of the people who testified at the committee hearing said that it's in numbers that they've never seen before. It's causing worries about damage to property. People in those rural areas can't afford to take the trees down, so they go to the legislators for help. They're looking at finding volunteers, organizations to help bring those trees down for people who need them. In the meantime, it has been blamed for 2 deaths, one in St. Landry and one in Rapides Parish.
And what happened? The trees
fell
down?
I think one is on, I got a report, one, I think in Rapides, fell on a structure. I don't know if it was a trailer or a home and killed someone. The St. Landry, I don't have any details on, but they were both weekend. In one case, it was definitely a storm. But these trees are falling sometimes without storm conditions, just because they're dying and getting weak, and so the implications are on homeowners removing the trees. And you know, I'm no plant expert, but I did a little reading on this. It doesn't look like there's any way to treat the tree. It just has to be taken down and removed. So that could affect agricultural interests, homeowners, businesses, and of course we've got worries with power lines.
And the testimony at the joint committee hearing was that you don't just cut down the tree. You have to apparently dig a wide berth all the way around the tree to remove it. You're literally talking about thousands of dollars to take one tree, one of these massive pine trees down. And they're not only falling on homes and vehicles, but they're taking down power lines, they're crossing roads, and it's across a good swath of Louisiana and part of Mississippi too.
Yeah, it's going to be a big. They're talking about an emergency declaration, which could involve state funds at some point down the road.
And you're talking about getting help taking these trees down. Apparently, one woman did get help from.
We're hearing about different Good Samaritan organizations that are helping out, but the long-term implication, it may have to be a government program, especially if we get another drought and another infestation like this.
All right. Well, let's look ahead. Errol, what do you see coming up in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, there's a company, we actually in the last week, there's a company called CoStar that evaluates hotel stays around the nation. And they looked at the end of last month through July 4th to see what the hotel attendance was like. Throughout the country, there's always a downswing during 4th of July week because people are out camping, but New Orleans led the nation, and it had the top increase. Probably Essence, I think, had a lot to do with it. But St. Louis and Tampa Bay had the worst, but New Orleans is okay during that period.
All right. Dave?
A federal grand jury at U.S. District Court in New Orleans is considering evidence by all indications in the case of New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell and her former NOPD bodyguard, Jeffrey Vappie.
Wow.
Subpoenas have been issued. Vappie and Cantrell, we're told, have secured lawyers. And really any time now, it's potential that we could see indictments handed up from this grand jury for anything up to and including payroll fraud for allegations that Vappie and Cantrell were spending private time together when he was on the clock getting paid by public dollars.
And what would the allegation be against her?
That she was complicit, that she approved it, and that she knew and participated in the payroll fraud. But, you know, once you impanel a grand jury and people start talking, that can lead anywhere. And there have been rumors of other allegations and other alleged conspiracies, so we'll wait and see what happens. But the other question, though, would be, if she is indicted, would it change her behavior in any way? And many experts aren't so sure it would.
Okay, Kevin?
We, of course, are familiar with the back and forth over the police consent decree here, but there have been police scandals up in Baton Rouge, too. And just today, a judge issued an injunction blocking the use of some of the strip search policies that the Baton Rouge police are using. Haven't had a chance to go through the entire ruling, but apparently, and it's an outgrowth of what's been called the Brave Cave scandal in Baton Rouge.
All right, LeBron?
Quickly, good news. State Park celebrating 90 years, free admission Saturday to all of the state parks.
Sounds good. All right. That's our program this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Marcia will be back next week. Thanks to our informed sources. Thank you again for tuning in. Take care.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
Public television is our passion. With so much content that WYES broadcasts and presents online, we are quite entertained and highly informed.
Please join us in supporting WYES.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.